Again, welcome everyone this evening for an informative talk on the work and the ideas of a wonderful photographer, filmmaker, storyteller, Renaissance man. Um, we're going to talk about Gordon Parks, and you will be surrounded by a panel of superstars. I am so delighted to be here, and I'm so delighted to have these people in my realm. And at some point I will introduce you to them. But for now, we're going to talk about the work of Gordon Parks, his effect. And before we get into that, right, I guess we're going to have this big reveal, and the reveal would be the winners of the homage to the works of Gordon Parks by our um, fantastic students. But before I put Professor Woolley, Sarah on, I would like to thank that amazing faculty who put this thing together, and that's Professor Sarah Woolley, that's Professor Josh Kapuscinski, and our fearless leader, Professor Douglas Davis, wherever you may be. I hope you can just tune in for a minute or two. Professor Anita Geraldo, Professor Tanya Getz, Professor Robin Michaels. These people, along with Professor George Garastegui, have all played formidable roles in making this thing happen. And along with our amazing staff of professionals and amazing technical people, that I really appreciate, and I want to thank you for. It's been amazing, and it wouldn't be possible without you, right? So after saying that, I will bring on Professor Sarah Woolley to announce the winners. Are you ready, Professor?
I am so ready. So with that, that was a great intro. Yeah, as my colleague Professor Larkins is saying, this event is the culmination of a study that we have spent the entire semester working on, an immersion in the incredible work of the visionary Gordon Parks. And so this event is part of the Gen Ed theme of connected. And we took that as a department as connected through the work of Gordon Parks. And so we have infused in small or large ways through every class some aspect of Parks's work, whether it was his writing, his films, or his photographs. And so this became, this was something where many, many hands made light work. This was the entire department getting in and contributing. And we now have an online exhibition because of all of our faculty and students, because of all of the support. We got over 170 entries. As gallery coordinator, I was completely blown away and actually had to say, whoops, we need an extra week to put all of this together. So this is now up and live and is going to remain up on the Open Lab. A little shout out to the Open Lab. Thank you guys for giving us a spotlight this week. And we are really excited about this work. So it will remain up for the entire summer. Maybe it will remain up indefinitely. But we are super, super proud of all of our students who contributed to this online exhibition and part of our online Grace Gallery. So the Grace Gallery Committee had the really, really difficult task over the course of this week of choosing just 5 best in shows out of all of this work. This was, like I said, it was incredibly difficult. I want to share with you guys the criteria that we used to be able to make that decision before we go ahead and announce those winners. So the first thing that we looked at was, has the artist used their chosen medium as a weapon to stand against the things they hate? Is the work in alignment with the philosophies of Parks's and uses creativity as a medium for change? The second criteria, is the work unique? Does it demonstrate personal vision and the voice of its creator? And lastly, does it look good? Simply, does the piece use design theory, composition, contrast, image hierarchy, and craftsmanship in their chosen medium well? And so without further ado, we would like to reveal our very best in show. And really exciting here, our best in show winners, the 5 winners, are actually going to be receiving $365 each through COMD 365 funding. So, and that can be spent in any way that they choose. I personally am plugging that they use it to further their careers and to submit their amazing work to more shows. Professor Kapuscinski, would you mind showing us the winners?
Yes, sounds good. Okay, so I have a little video to share, and we'll cue that up.
So congratulations to all of our winners. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Yeah. These students chose to use their chosen medium as a weapon against the things that they hate. I was so moved by so much work, and as was the committee, we had a very hard time making these decisions. And congratulations to the entire student body who contributed so heavily to make this such a successful and amazing department-wide effort. As a personal note, as part of the theme Connected, we wanted to connect the student body, but in reality, what happened is this connected all of us as a department. It brought faculty closer together as well. So, you know, on a personal note, thank you to faculty. Again, thank you to Professor Davis. And I also wanted to just as well thank our co-sponsors, the African American Studies Department, as well as the Hiphop Archive and Research Institute at Harvard University's Hutchins Center for African American Research. We are so excited to host this panel. And one more thing, the faculty were so excited to participate in this that we ended up creating our own work. Even though we're not allowed to participate in the competition, we created our own work for exhibition, which we did today as part of a 45-minute timed challenge, which was live streamed on YouTube. So you can see all of the details and the difficulties and the ups and downs of creating design and illustration work in the moment. And these works are going to be part of a faculty gallery that I'm going to add to the online exhibition. As part of, to get an idea of the context, we were each given a quote of Gordon Parks's to work from, and then 45 minutes to respond to it. We did not know ahead of time what the quote would be. We only knew that we would find out in that moment what the challenge was, and then we just had to go. So thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to cede the mic over to our amazing moderator, Professor George Larkins. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't believe a word of that. Anyway, Thank you again. Amazing work by everyone, and congratulations to everyone who was involved in that process. So before we begin overall, there's rituals that I do to sort of like bless the moment, if you will. So bear with me. Right. And one of those things is that I, before I do anything, I like to pay homage to the indigenous people, right, whose land that we occupy, right? That's that's rightfully theirs. I want to be clear that I understand that, and I want to be clear that I want to be known that I know that, right? And I thank them for that, right? With all due respect. Second of all, I want to pay homage to some wonderful, amazing people that we lost in the hip hop world. Starting with Darkman X, also known as DMX, Black Rob, um, one of Harlem's own, and um, Shock G, right, from Digital Underground. Those people made tremendous contributions to the art and genre of music and hip hop. And I wish them a peaceful journey. And also to all of those others, lost souls, people of color who have lost their life through the injustices of this system. I wish them peaceful journeys as well. So the last thing, right, on that context is the fact that we as a whole we have to stop, especially of color, we have to stop that idea of Asian hate. We, of all people, got no business doing that. One of the reasons, I'll tell you a little story, right? During the Vietnam period, and those of you who saw Spike Lee's film, the Five Bloods, sort of like shed a little light on that and a context. I was back during that time. I didn't go to Vietnam because I was a radical and they thought I was crazy. But I had friends that went. And one of the things that what the Vietnamese people did for the brothers in those situations was that they would come and warn them, right, when there will be attacks on their camps, right. They did that out of the goodness of their hearts, right, which lets me know, right, which I want to make it clear that of any people, we can't do that. We have to stop that, right? And I'm sure everyone in this panel knows that already, but the people and everyone in the audience knows that. But if you know anyone, that is a no-go, right? That's a no-go. Thank you for listening to that for me. But it's just things that it's just the way I roll, right? A little bit before I introduce our wonderful, honorable panelists, right? We have one thing I want to point, we have one cancellation and from the Gordon Parks Foundation, but other than that, we have an amazing panel that's waiting to, I mean, like, these are superstars and I'm just the guy in the room. So therefore, I had a conversation with Professor Bennett a few days ago, and she mentioned the fact that she said, you know what, you should let some people know about who you really are and the effects that Gordon Parks had on you, right? And how do I talk about how do I talk about Gordon Parks and what he means, what he's meant to me, right? Gordon Parks served as a mentor. He served as a hero to me from the beginning of my photographic career. And what I'm about to share with you, most people in my department don't even know about, right? Because most people think I just teach design and motion. I'm not sure I understand. So most people talk about, think that I teach about design and motion and stuff of this nature. But I had a past life, and that past life involved photography, and to the fullest extent. And a little bit, let me share the story. I'm going to just share a quick story with you and sort of like to let you know why I'm in the room, right? I'm in the room not just because I'm Black. I'm in the room because Park and I shared something in common, and it was beyond photography. It's the things that he went through along the way, and why he and how he affected me is still how. So the question one: how did I come in contact with Gordon Parks or the work with Gordon Parks? Because I knew a little bit of a backstory. I kind of like always had cameras in my house. My father was an amateur photographer, but he never nothing. He didn't take anything seriously. He did Polaroids, right? Peeling, shoot and peel, right? For those of you may remember that, but some of you don't, and that's fine. And but for at an age of I guess 8, 9, I got my first Kodak camera. It was a Kodak Brownie Hawkeye, right? Shot 620 film. And I used it for like from like third grade to sixth grade. And after that, the film got too expensive to buy and process. We talk because remember now, let me just sort of like cash you back in all the time of history. We're talking about film, right? We're not talking about anything, wasn't anything digital back in those days. So you had to buy film, shoot it, and then pay to have it processed. And I did that for, like I said, from maybe about third grade to sixth grade. And then we just like, he stopped buying it, right? And I kind of lost interest, should I say, even if I had interest in the first place, but I stopped. And I can tell you right now, I come from the South. It was the Southern aspect. And I didn't come to New York till late early 70s. But prior to that, it was just that Southern lifestyle. And when I did came to New York, I wasn't really interested in photography. Right, I had relatives here. I hung out, and my relatives were in most of them. They were in Bed-Stuy, but my number one relative was in Crown Heights, and he was my uncle. And again, right, I started running around doing things that teenage Black boys did at the time and maybe do now, right? Well, whatever it wasn't constructive at all, right? And the thing was, it started to wear on me and my family and everyone I was close to. So what happened, right? I found a way to get to California, right? And my California people understand what you're gonna understand what I talk about when we get there. Still no real idea of it. I had a camera, right? By the time before I left New York, I found my love for photography again. But in reality, it really wasn't for photography. It was for pride of ownership. I was enamored by the tool itself, by a 35 millimeter SLR single lens reflex camera. Just the way that thing was made, I found fascinating. I found fascinating. Not that it's not that I really knew what to do with it. But I remember my first 35 millimeter camera I got off the streets, right? And didn't know how to load the film, didn't know how to, work, didn't know how to work the camera. And I had a brother-in-law, so like showed me a few things, right? And I kind of like made it work most of the time. Sometimes it didn't. So I moved on, and I had a friend that went out to California, and he said, "You know what? You should come to California, right?" And I said, "Okay, right. What do I had to lose, right?" New York was, as Gil Scott Heron said, New York was really killing me. The East Coast was killing me. So I went to California, and I got out there. I got a job in a camera store, right? But then I met another photographer from the East Coast as well. Good friend of mine. So, he's recently departed, but he sort of like took me around and showed me all the aspects of West Coast photography. This was Los Angeles, California. I work in a camera store that was downtown LA, and I kind of like work my way around. I had, and the friend that invited me out sort of, we parted ways, right? You know how I like to say, you don't know a person until you live with them, right? So we just didn't work out. So I was kind of like left to my own devices. It wasn't for my friend. His name was Solango, and Solango Lee was the guy who kind of like took me in and showed me different things about photography. He was really into photography, and he was and he had enrolled in LA Trade Tech, right? And by that time, I was going to enroll as well, but I met someone and we moved to San Diego, right? And I enrolled in San Diego City College, right? And during that time, and those of you from the West Coast, city colleges or community colleges was cheap. It was like, I think I was paying $50 a term. So I don't want to say that too loud, right? Because it's $50 a term, and you show up and and one of the classes that I took, right, with respect to the African American Studies Department was a black, at that time it was called Black History, right? I took a Black History class, and there I got introduced to all the amazing writers, right? And one of those writers happened to be I got into Gordon Parks, right? And the book that I picked up was A Choice of Weapons. Now, my field was photography, and I thought I knew something about photography, and I kind of like, I was getting the skills to set down and everything. But, right, when I picked that book up, right, some things started to happen, right? My camera and everything changed, and the way I looked at things changed. So let me sort of like share a little episode here, right? Now, this is in San Diego, right? And this was in the 80s, right? You're looking at it, it's film, right? And it's one of the images that I took inspired by the work of Mr. Parks, right? He grabbed me, and then he just didn't grab me with his imagery. He grabbed me with his story and what he had been through, the things that he had to do to get to where he was. That's the thing that really touched me, right? And the way he looked at things. And we're going to get into some of that thing. And as we go through this, right? If you have a question about any of this stuff, feel free, let me know, right? And so this was happening with, and again, a protest march in San Diego, right? And here is on this black and white, that's a Parks image, right? And this is an image that I took. Now, mind you, right? I wasn't aware of this image when this was happening, right? Um, and I was completely surprised to know that, or to find out that this kind of thing was happening on the West Coast, right? We being from the East Coast, thinking the West Coast is all laid back, it is hippies, and it's, patchouli, and you smoking big blunts, and you just hanging out on the beach, right? And I come to find out that there's also another side to the West Coast, right? And even in a city, because those of you from the West Coast have visited the West Coast, and when you go to a place like San Diego is like, you think that it's, where's the conflict? Where's the problem? It's all sunny, it's all beach. You go to La Jolla, or you hang out in Mission Valley, Mission Hills, and Hillcrest and places like that. It's nice. I come in the school that I had attended was San Diego City College, and San Diego City it's downtown San Diego. Now downtown San Diego is vintage. It's like, let's see what's like that. It would be sort of like early downtown Lower East Side. I won't even say Lower East. Let's say South Street. It's more like South Street. It's more like the Seaport, right? Where you have the brick roads, and you have they got a section on that's called a gaslight district, where did actually have gas lights lighting up at night. So, but again, I explored the city, and this is kind of stuff that I ran across once, and this got me a job. Well, it wasn't a job because I don't think it was it wasn't paying, right? But anyway, San Diego had a black newspaper down there that's called if I remember correctly, the View, the San Diego View, right? And I was just doing pictures for them, or I would go ahead and take some pictures and just show them, right? And they published some of them. And I remember one situation talking about somebody didn't know what they were doing, and I went out and they actually gave me an assignment, some event to cover. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, I came back and the pictures didn't come out, right? And when I looked, right, the film never went through the camera, right? That's the thing that the modern technology has eliminated, right? The film never came through the camera and everything was blank, right? Fortunately for me, the people were somewhat accommodating. And one reason, I guess they weren't paying any money, so they couldn't complain about it too much. But anyway, so I started to visit um, areas within the context of what Parks was visiting, right? And these are the things that I kind of like discovered along the way. But while I was at San Diego City College, right, and becoming aware of the power from the Black History Department, where I read writers like Amir Baraka, writers like you know Langston Hughes, right, Dr. John Hope Franklin, right, ideas based on W. Du Bois. They even had a play. I was in a play with W. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington, right? And I played W. Du Bois. It seems to me, Booker T. It was great, right? And for someone from the East Coast, again, right? I'm not from a highly educated family, so I want everyone to know that it's like I'm not some upper or middle class kid, right? Nobody in my family went to college. Nobody, it's the same as some of you. Nobody in my family was interested in anything visual or anything art wise. They didn't care anything about that, right? What they cared about was if you can get a job, no matter what kind it was, you found it and you did it and you continue to do the thing that you want to do. Um, or the thing that you need to do. Not what you want to do, it's what you need to do. And the West Coast freed me of that, right? It freed me of that umbrella that was over my family had on me and the streets had on me. So, and one of the things really cool, back up for a really quick, so I tried to major in business administration in college on the East Coast. And I met someone and she was um, major in art, right? And I wanted to major in art, change my art, and no one, no, don't do that. There's no money in that. Major in business, right? Do that, and I didn't want to do that, right? But I did it anyway. I majored in business, right? And I failed out. I flunked out, and the lesson that I learned from that is that at first I was mad at the people who gave me that advice, but then I turned it inward and I looked at myself and I said, you know what? But again, this didn't happen overnight. Right? As time went on, I looked out and I said, I was the one who made that decision to accept that advice. I did not have to do that. It was my decision. So I cannot cast blame on people who are supposedly having my best interests at heart. So the lesson there is for everyone, right? You have to try to work on things that are good for you and your soul. And at the end, whether you take advice from someone or not, you have to take full responsibility for that advice you took. All right. So when I was so again, right, I kind of like got really into this idea of protest, how ideas work among people of color, right? What we were up against, and I learned so much from that class. In addition to the photography class that I had, and doing that photography class, I was in. Uh, I had a visiting. Uh, it was a visitor came. He was an agent, if you will. At that time, they were called the photographers for rep, and he visited my class, and he looked at everyone's work and he looked at my work and he said, this is okay, this is good, but if you really want to really excel in this field, you should you should try to get into the school that's called Art Center, a school in, I said, where's that, right? And I had never heard of it. I was from the East Coast. He says it's a school in Pasadena, right? And it's called Art Center College of Design. And you should probably look into getting in that school. And that's as much as he told me, right? And so I said, what the hell, I try it, right? And I tried to get in, and I told my friend about it, the same friend that I worked in the camera school a few years earlier, And he said, yeah, man, everybody knows about that school on the West Coast, but no one really knows where it is, right? All the brothers know about the school, right? So I said, okay, let's try. I'm going to try to find it. And I pull out I had a car. I had gotten a car, but again, it was through a relationship I was in. And I pull out my old Thomas Brothers. If you're from the West Coast, you know what Thomas Brothers is. Thomas Brothers is the the GPS of yesteryear, right? You know, everything it's like it's very thick, right? And everything in where you want to go, it was in Thomas Brothers. It was in a Thomas Brothers map. So I found it on Thomas Brothers, and I drove up to the campus, right? And I went in and they said, okay, you need a portfolio. And I had a portfolio that I had put together at San Diego City College, right? And I brought my portfolio in, and they said, okay, leave the portfolio with us, and we'll let you know whether you can get in or not, right? And so I did that, and not thinking much of it. I'm not, it's okay, right? No big deal. It looks, it looks nice here, right? And the work on that, I went inside the student gallery and work was nice, but it's okay. All right, fine. And got back in my car and went back downtown LA, right? Back to work. I mean, from LA, downtown LA to where he did, all the way back to San Diego, really. And then I got a notice, a message, a letter that said I had been accepted to this place. And I said, that's fine. So I went back up there and to pick up my work. And they said, okay, you've been accepted, when do fill out the application, this kind of thing, right? So I did that, and it came to find out it was so expensive. And once I found out how much it cost, I said to myself, I can't do this. I said, and that let me back up a little bit more, right? At that time I had a daughter, right? I had a daughter, and that daughter is a grown woman now, but I had a daughter, right? And she must have been around maybe around 2 years old. I said, I can afford this, and to make it whatever you were paying to go to CUNY now, it was more than that 30 plus years ago, right? It was more than that, right? More like double, right? So I said, I can't do that, right? And I left, right? And I came and I was going to continue the rest of my life, walking around my camera, bumping around and working in camera stores and doing that kind of thing. Because I had dropped out of San Diego City College because I had a kid. And I had another friend, she was an engineer, and she knew about it. And she told me, I told her, hey, they accepted for this school, but I can't afford to go. And she told me this. She said, let me tell you something. Whether you know it or not, they only accept 1% of the people who apply for to that school. And if you are accepted to that school, you need to find a way to go. She said, you need to find a way, right? So I went back up there. I think it was a year, it was like a day before my application was going to expire. It had been that long. And and I said, okay, I want to come to school, but let me tell you, I want to tell you right now, I have no money, right? They said, well, if you can come up with a couple of thousand, we can sort of like figure out ways to get you. I said, wait, I said, listen, I have $0. I have no money, none, nothing, right? And they said, okay, as my advisor said, we can do this for you, right? We can try to give you a loan for the first term, right? And I'm going to tell you, your GPA ain't looking that hot right now, right? And if you can manage to pull your GPA up, right, and dedicate yourself to this, right, you can apply for scholarships, and the scholarships will alleviate your loans and everything of that nature. So I said, okay, right? But they said, okay, but let me warn you about this, right? This school will require, we don't recommend that you work. You will be in the school from 9 in the morning to 9 at night for 6 days a week, right? We can't tell you not to work, but from our experience, whoever has tried to work and come to the school has failed out. So that's your choice. I said, I can't work. Okay. Right? And I said, okay, right? I'm willing to try it. So I did, right? And I got in and they did show me um, they kept the promise, right? I went in the next following term, I qualified for scholarships, and from that point on, I was on full scholarships my entire time there. So which brings me to, and then this is how the work started to change, right? This is my work after San Diego City College, right? This is the work from Art Center, right? This is something like what I started to do. I started to investigate still life, but more important than that, I started to investigate light, right? And one of the things that Parks talks about as well is light, the power of light, how that works, right? From here, from still objects to people, right? I started to look at how do you photograph people. The other thing I want to add to this was all done. Then I moved from the 35 millimeter, right, camera to the big cameras that you see parks, pictures of parks in front of, to what you call large format, 4 by 5 and 8 by 10, 8 by 10 pieces of film, right? And I started to photograph people, right, with this large format camera. So let me explain what large format is, right? It's so big where it's only one shot, right? It's not like pop, pop, pop. It's two pieces of film, one piece of film on one side of the what they call film holder, and another piece of film on the other side of the film holder, right? And from there, right, you take one shot, you pull it out, turn it around, pull the dark slide, and you take the other shot. So you get two shots, two pieces of film, right? And I started to explore lighting and people, right? And again, I want to point out this is all film, right? This is no digital yet, right? This is during a time where if you got it wrong, right? You're back to the drawing board. You start. There's no Command Z. There's no going into Lightroom or Photoshop and trying to make the picture better, right? This is a roll of film. You expose it, right? You develop it, and you make it work for you, right? And if anything it fails in any one of those levels, you go back to the beginning, right? So these are the people that I try to, and as you see what's going on here, it's starting to develop into more of a fashion kind of feel, a fashion kind of look. And I was under the impression that that's where I was headed. But right, one of the things that I was going to go through is here, right? So again, right, really briefly, this is kind of like what happened, right? So I came back to New York, right? And one of the jobs that I got was a shot of to do a feature on Cornell West, right? Cornell West at Cambridge, right? And the in a magazine that's called Emerge. So I came back and I started doing editorial work, right? For different magazines, and I did some work for the Source, shot somebody named Shaka King for the Source, Billy Porter for Vibe magazine, and so forth, right? And I got the chance to come up. I was in Brooklyn, and the art director said, "You're gonna have to come to Cambridge, right, and to do this feature story on Cornell West." And I photographed him. Then I met, Henry Louis Gates there, and kind of like hung out for a few days and got to know him, right? Um, and from that point, it took me to a place called, it took me to Russia, right? From that idea, I started to cover things in Russia. So, and again, if you look at the work, it starts to feel like, back to my black and white. This is done with a medium format camera, right? You know, and again, and photographing people in Russia. Interesting stories I have to tell you about Russia. If we have time, anybody can ask me a question about that. But from Russia, I went to Paris, right? And Paris started to, this is when my life changed. And this is when I started to talk about, this is when I started to feel the evidence of Gordon Parks, right? Because I knew that he spent time here, right? And the last shot here is that reference, right? So keep in mind again, as this was done, I did not. This is my image here, and that's Park's image there. Now, this was a subconscious image, right? This image was, I think, this has to be like 20 years old, right? And I only until I had got the image, looked at it, and decided that wow, this was a Park theme. This was a Park image. So that's kind of like my effect on how Parks has affected me And that's kind of like why I'm here, right? And I thank you for looking. So this brings me to my fabulous and excellent panelists. So let me start with the introduction. I want to get this right. So I'm going to go down here and look at, we have Professor Marcyliena Morgan, PhD. Um, Professor Marcyliena Morgan is a professor in the Department of African and African American Studies and founding director of the Hip Hop Archive and Research Institute of the Hutchins Center for the African and African American Research. She earned both her BA and her MA degrees at the University of Illinois in Chicago. She obtained an additional MA in linguistics at the University of Essex, England, and her PhD through the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. Since 2002, when the Hip Hop Archive and Research Institute was founded, students, faculty, artists, and other participants in hip hop culture have been committed to supporting and establishing critical research and scholarship devoted to knowledge, art, culture, materials, organizations, movements, and institutions developed by those who support and follow hip hop. In addition to her work on hip hop culture, Professor Morgan has received research grants from 4 foundations and centers of disease control, and has held tenured faculty positions in anthropology at the University of California, Los Angeles, and in communications at Stanford University. Her research and teachings include African American and African diasporan culture and language, hip hop, and the ethnography of communications, identity and technology and media, gender and sexuality, education and language, race and class. She is the author of many works that focus on youth, gender, racism, language, culture, identity, social linguistics, discourse, interaction, including the Daedalus publication, Hip Hop and the Global Imprint of Black Cultural Form, Language, Discourse, and Power, in African American Studies, African American Culture, in her book, The Real Hip Hop, Battling for Knowledge, Power, Respect, and Underground Duke Press. Her most recent book publication was Speech Communication and Cambridge University Press. Dr. Morgan, I welcome you. It is an honor and it is a pleasure to have you in our virtual realm. And I really appreciate you. Next on our list is one of our own, right? Professor Dionne M. Bennett holds a PhD in anthropology from the University of California, Los Angeles, where she studied the psychocultural studies and medical anthropology program. She graduated magna cum laude with a BA in anthropology and literature from Yale University. Professor Dionne M. Bennett holds a PhD in anthropology and an assistant professor in the African American Studies Department at CUNY City University of New York City College and of Technology. She is an associate director of the Hip Hop Archive and Research Institute at Harvard University Hutchins Center. She was previously Institute Director of Gender Studies and Social Advocacy and has been affiliated with the Institute since its founding in 2002 by Executive Director Dr. Marcyliena Morgan, PhD. She was previously the Director of the African American Studies Program at the University of Detroit, Mercy. She has been a fellow of Harvard University, W. Du Bois Institute for African and African American Research, the Ford Foundation, and the UCLA President's Office. Her book, The Souls of Black Folks, Romantic Love in African American Culture, will be published at the University of North Carolina Press. She has been published she has been published, right, and with the photographer Matthew Jordan Smith of Sepia Dreams. You know that book, good book. A celebration of Black achievement through words and images, and co-editor of Revolutions of the Mind, Cultural Studies in the African Diaspora Project. She has worked in the entertainment industry and has a television writer, researcher, and segment producer and experience she applies to her research and pedagogy. Her research areas include psychoculture, anthropology, urban anthropology, African American and African diaspora studies, critical race studies, women and gender studies, media and cultural studies, pop studies, and that which engages all the others. Welcome, Dr. Bennett. Right, there's an echo, Josh. So,
yeah, if any of you guys have your YouTube window open on your computer, you could just close that. Obviously, keep your Zoom window open. You guys want to just check that real quick?
I never opened it.
Welcome, Dr. Bennett. Right, there's an echo, Josh. So,
Yeah, I think it's not me. George, could it be yours?
nope, I don't have anything open but this window here.
So keep your Zoom window.
Okay.
All right. Well, just check that real quick. Why don't we all mute each other, and then who is going to speak here?
Could it be yours?
Nope, I don't have anything open but this window here.
So keep your Zoom window. All right. Well, just check that.
Marcyliena, I think it may be, or Dr. Morgan, I think it may be.
Why don't we all mute each other, and then
where do you think it?
And then
It may
is
be
going to speak
embedded
here?
somewhere. I keep thinking that's the dog I'm hearing, by the way.
This window here.
Keep your Zoom.
So we'll leave. Well, I can leave and come
Marcyliena,
back.
I think it may be, or Dr. Morgan, I think it may be.
So
See if I can come back.
yeah, why don't you guys log off and then come back? So everyone watching on YouTube, bear with us. We're experiencing an echo as we all can hear. So we're just gonna have to try that,
So
and I think
I
maybe
don't hear
that
it
worked
now,
actually.
Yeah, I don't hear it now.
I think it was Dr. Morgan's computer. So when she logs back in, let's hope that that will solve the challenge. Let's see if we can get her back. And Professor Larkins, while we're waiting for Dr. Morgan to log back in, maybe we can talk a little bit about the significance of of Gordon Parks and why it was so essential to discuss him now. I don't think there's ever been a time when he wasn't essential.
Right.
And so let's maybe, reflect on that. I was really excited when I found out about the student work and just blown away by it. I was trying to clap earlier, but I just want to say to the students, Gordon Parks is no longer with us, but all the work that they did was in the same spirit of the mission of his work. And he would have been so proud to see that work. I was certainly proud as a faculty member to witness it. So I do want to take a moment to thank all of the students and the professors who guided them. So I just wanted, and I've been wanting to say that anyway. So as we wait for Dr. Morgan to come back, we can talk a little bit about that. I think, and if I can reflect on what you said about your journey, Professor Larkins, I hope that one of the things that our students will kind of recognize is the importance of forging your own path. And I think that's what you've done, and certainly that's what Gordon Parks did. This idea of not only not letting obstacles stop you, but really sincerely honoring your own vision And I think that's one of the things that's so extraordinary about him. Not only did he honor his own vision, but because he shared it and shared it so widely, it changed the way we all look at things. It changed the way we see America. I've been thinking a lot about how we see democracy, and I'm just texting Dr. Morgan to see if she can log back in. Oh, there she is.
I think she's back. Okay.
She's back. Okay. And so what I was saying is I know that in a moment you'll be asking Dr. Morgan about the Hip Hop Archive, but I've been thinking a lot about democracy, and in preparing for this, reviewing a lot of Gordon Parks' images, and the fact that he was asked by the Farm Administration to explore. Oh, there's Dr. Morgan.
Still the same problem.
So what I was saying is I know that in a moment you'll. Yeah, I think something else is on. I think preparing for this, reviewing a lot of Gordon Parks. Yeah, so and the fact that he was
I clicked on the
by
Zoom,
the Farm Administration to
the Gordon Parks Zoom. There's US02 web.
Yeah, once you turn that part off, you can. Once you get on Zoom, you should close that window out.
Yeah, you should only be on Zoom. You shouldn't be on YouTube at all.
Or even the internet. If you're on like Safari, or just close that out. And Zoom will stay true.
Like only Zoom.
I'm actually not on YouTube. It says Zoom link to share with panel participants. So that's what I clicked
that
on.
part off. Once you get on Zoom, you should close that window out.
You should only be on Zoom. You shouldn't be on YouTube at all.
I'm not on YouTube.
It's not YouTube. It's the network, or it's like the Safari. You don't need that to be on Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come out of this again.
Just close that part off.
So I think what might help is that if, like George is saying, that there's only the Zoom window open and the internet is completely closed.
She's signed out again. So she's trying again. So in any case, I'll continue, and we'll continue to have our dialogue as she's signing back in. One of the things that was striking in looking at his photographs, not just of Black people, but of people of different races as well, was the way he translated the concept of democracy visually. And I think that's something, especially now, as we're starting to ask questions about democracy and what it means and how do we really thoughtfully and meaningfully participate in it. You know, I know we talk a lot about voting, but you can vote with your art. I think in some ways he was voting with his art. And I think that's something that our students can do as well. Like, how is your work as an artist representing your values? And I'm not sure there's anyone more effective than Gordon Parks at using his art to represent the values of justice, equality, democracy, our shared humanity, as he was able to do. And so it was really quite extraordinary to kind of review his work and see that how much he was able to do that. So we shall see if we can get Dr. Morgan back on. But another question, you know, maybe that we can really think about is the power of thinking of your art as a kind of a weapon. And he was very specific, right, about describing his camera as a weapon and describing not just in general, but specifically against racism and against poverty. And I think that's such a powerful concept. Yes. Do you want to move on to some of the questions you had for me, and then when Dr. Morgan's back in,
sure,
we can bring her in.
Yeah, and let me address that last statement even about the idea of the choice of weapons. A little insight on Parks before he show you how profound he was before he became introduced in photography. Music, he states that music was his choice of weapon. And the key thing, the most interesting thing about it, that he could not read music, right? He played music by ear, and he plays it, but he started at a really young age, and he tells this amazing story about when he was in school, and he's played so well that he got invited to play in a concert, right? And so they gave him the notes to go, the music notes to go. So he couldn't read any music, so but I think his sister could, right? And he developed a number system, right, to replace reading notes, right? But all he had to do was actually hear it, right? And he became this composer. And one of the things that he talked about when he was his first girlfriend, and they broke up, and he composed this song for her, right? And it was called, I think, No Love. And it was his choice of weapons, right, to get him noticed by people. So that idea of weapons and the use of weapons through art has pretty much has been a part of his life the whole time. So a question for
Dr. Morgan is back. Welcome
all
back,
right.
Dr. Morgan. And I don't think we're hearing feedback now, so I think we're okay.
It wasn't my YouTube, so
No,
but
we don't know
it
what though.
doesn't matter. I'm
You're
very happy
here.
to be back. Yes.
Yes. So glad you're back.
Yeah.
Quick a question. Let's start with I've seen you on numerous YouTube things since I become aware of you, Dr. Morgan, and I love all the interviews you've given. I love the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers thing. I was just looking at that. Amazing. I love that idea of if you want to get someone's attention, especially our youth, right? Hip hop is the language. It is the way, and you've figured that out, right? So could you tell us again? Can you tell us more about this hip hop industry, the hip hop archives, that Nasir Jones fellowship thing, and those of you who, and I'm pretty sure you can explain if you don't know who Nasir Jones is, Professor Morgan will tell you who that is, right? And the whole purpose behind it, and kind of like how all that came about.
Well, let me just start by saying thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be back. I wish I were actually physically back because I do miss New York, I have to tell you. But, at this point, I'm completely vaccinated. And so now I have to make big decisions. And the big decisions are, which store will I actually walk in? Because I'm not going crazy with this.
No.
I want everybody to act right, so we can get this as together as we can. And the thing about hip hop is I grew up on the south side of Chicago at the height of music in Chicago, on the street, all the artists, the jazz artists, especially musicians, but also the visual artists. And Chicago was a city that celebrated Blackness every day, every minute that it could. And there were no barriers between the genres or the art that we were dealing with. And so, yes, it could be gospel. Yes, it could be jazz. It could be R&B. It could be this and that. It definitely could also be opera, because everybody in my neighborhood thought they had just the most incredible voices. So you kept hearing people like, oh no, not again. It was absolutely wonderful. And so when you grow up in that, in that situation, and a lot of cultures have that kind of, there's music, there's activity, but music isn't just notes. It is what's bringing the community together. It is what everyone is thinking and saying, and it takes a lane like in your brain or your body or your soul, and it operates from there around everything else. And so you've got this notion that there are other people out there who are feeling what you're feeling, and you can do anything because you're going to run into them somewhere because you keep hearing that song, or you keep seeing that art, or you keep hearing that poetry, et cetera, et cetera. So I grew up thinking of the arts as the way as a necessity, the way that I thought science was a necessity. I didn't think one was more important than the other. I thought they were all part of what made us work and what made us Black. And one of the things as a kid that I was aware of was that a lot of what made us Black and strong and be and able to deal with stuff was treated as if it was weakness when it was really our power. And so when more and more hip hop appeared, and you got folks dancing for no apparent reason. I mean, I remember the first time there were some b-boys at a house party, and so I was old. I'm older than hip hop, right? So I'm at a house party with some friends, and all of a sudden their kids hit the floor, start spinning. I was like, oh, okay, all right. You guys explain this to me, because this stuff I can't. It's a dance I can't do. So you know, all of that is what I began to realize was what protected me and meant I could have dreams, and I could succeed, and I could fail, and I could still go forward. That real strong sense of community. And I'm so grateful that I had that as a background. So when I finished college and, you know, decided, you know, very long story, but decided I was going to be a teacher at university, I did not come from a family where people had taught at universities. My father had gone to college. He didn't graduate. He was a victim of the Korean War, so he had a substance addiction and all this other stuff, and he was angry all the time. And so, I mean, what we did bond over was music and jazz, and that was incredibly special. But in the midst of all that, I didn't have anyone who could say, well, this is what college is like. You know, this is what universities are like. This is what racism looks like in college, you know, because I didn't think in the terms of I'm going to have to deal with racism when I go to college. You know, if I go into a neighborhood that has a reputation of not being good neighbors, I know I'm going in there. But I didn't know going into the building at University of Illinois was going to, you know, have people immediately ask me what I'm doing there. I can't possibly be a student.
That's a problem.
So really thinking about that, you know, I forget which comedian had used this line, but, you know, I kept thinking of the administration and various people as low expectation having people. I'm not going to say the word that you know, and I laughed, and you know, so I'm thinking, I'm talking to friends or whatever, and I'm talking about racism and how horrible this is, and I'm laughing, and some people say, why are you laughing? It's not funny. And I said, it's not that kind of laugh. And so then we're talking more and more about, you know, it really thinking about how incredible so many of us are, and how fortunate we are to come from people, you know, and in terms of understanding that we are really, irrespective of how bad it gets, forward is where we're going. And we may pause and what have you, it's going to be forward. So when I was offered a job, I had students around me. It was it was UCLA. And one of those students around me was Professor Dionne Bennett. So I had students around me as hip hop was developing, and they were like, Professor Moore, you have to do something. You have to do something. You know, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I knew hip hop. But I didn't know it as a fan. I knew it, you know, in lots of different ways, but, you know, and I didn't have a group that I, you know, traveled with in terms of, whereas before I used to do that just because I was a big social dancer. So, you know, we go in groups to clubs. I don't think I've ever mentioned that to you, Dionne, but I had my day.
No, you haven't, and I'm going to ask more about it later.
I had my day. Yes, I had my day. But the thing is, I'm doing all that, and I'm looking around. This is after the 60s, this is after the 70s, Black Powers happened. And you realize it's not over, and so I began to listen to the lyrics and look at the way the youth were organizing themselves. And thinking about, well, how do I talk to them? How do I teach them? What can I bring so that they can see they can do it? Because much of what they did was criticism, and just playing around with that and thinking about that and learning from them and talking about that made me realize, okay, I will start a website or something of that sort. But we did things that the university did not support. Everyone was so talented in the group of students I worked with and creative that I didn't know, I knew who I imagined us to be in moments when we were that, but I didn't know just how bad we were in terms of taking over and stuff, because at one point we started the Hip Hop Archive at UCLA, and we were online, and we had a server, and the engineers, not high level engineers, but they shut off our electricity and tried to take down our server. And a couple of the students who worked with me said, "Oh, don't worry, Professor Morgan." So not only did they block that, they said, "Now you have a server. We can make money, because some of the churches want to put things up." And I just thought, we're going to be all right, it's going to be all right for sure. And so the beauty of just seeing all that happen meant that as I went through, my own thinking that I'm doing my own travel and decisions about what I'm going to do, I was absolutely being influenced by the spirit of the hip hop culture and the real energy and desire to keep going forward and do the best one can. And so today, I can't tell you how, you think about the movement, the Black Lives Matter, just all the different versions and the way more and more people are getting it, and unfortunately, some people of color who didn't believe it could happen to them are getting it, and so we're able to build more. And I think it's a responsibility of institutions who are involved, especially in education, that where there can be a lot of productivity, that those institutions work with the young people who are there to give them opportunities to develop and build. In hip hop, one big word was build, just keep building. And that I think is incredibly important. So as much as we could do, we do. Now it is hip hop. So as you may imagine, along the way, there were like a lot of shaky moments, and it's not just because it's hip hop, it's teenagers. And so, 15 years old is different from 17. If you've ever been around teenagers a lot, it's just like you got better options than trying to get someone to like, don't do it. And so I've learned a lot, but I have to tell you, I am just as through everything that we've been going through, I have been able to laugh, shake my head, get work done, or whatever, just looking at what this generation is dealing with and doing and doing with us and for us.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I will continue, even after this, I will continue to follow you, Dr. Morgan, and be into that. Professor Bennett, your thoughts on?
Yeah, Dr. Morgan is a little bit modest about the extraordinary work she's done with the Hip Hop Archive. And, you know, I think because hip hop has become so much more mainstream, people don't recognize the battles she fought to assert the that hip hop is an intellectual art form, an intellectual culture that deserves a seat at the table of academia. And you know, the fact that there is a hip hop archive at Harvard still blows my mind, and it's there because Dr. Morgan brought it there. And you know, part of her being there was developing that. And in a lot of ways, and you know, I met her as a graduate student, and she mentored me, and I've worked with the archive since the beginning. It's amazing to see its endurance because she has protected it so you know, so powerfully. And I think we see it in her books and in her writing as well. But it also becomes this way for young people, and I want to tie it back to Gordon Parks for a moment, for young people to recognize, and I think her book, The Real Hip Hop, really examines this, recognize that the work that they're doing in hip hop culture is intellectual work. It's important intellectual work. The work they're doing as artists is important intellectual work, and the work that they're doing as critics in their, you know, in their bedroom, you know, arguing with their friends is important intellectual work. And the reason I want to tie that back to Gordon Parks is that one of the reasons I find him so fascinating and so powerful is because I feel like our communities, and certainly my own family, is filled with self-educated intellectuals. Most Black people are not becoming intellectuals through academia, or if they are, it's very recent. Three of my four grandparents did not finish high school, much less go to college. And so it's fascinating to kind of watch him as a self-educated, self-taught artist and intellectual. Literally, he was working as a porter on a train, looking at magazines, and that's what made him decide to buy a camera for $12.50. And we don't necessarily think about that as someone being self-educated, but that's certainly exactly what it is. And so when you think about his journey as somebody going from someone who's teaching himself and becoming really a globally recognized photojournalist and filmmaker, and you know, many people don't realize that, you know, he wrote so many books, and he wrote poetry, and he, you know, wrote the libretto for a ballet, and all of the other things that he did. And that he was a composer, and all of these other things. All of that came from this Black intellectual tradition of teaching yourself, whether or not academic institutions embraced you. And I think we really need to celebrate that, even when we're in elite academic institutions, even when we're in college or in graduate school, we need to embrace that. And so one of the things that I love about the work that Dr. Morgan does and the work that the Hip Hop Archive does is that it's institutionalizing that value system. So in addition to saying, hey, you know, at one point, you know, Dr. Morgan decided she wasn't feeling Harvard anymore, went over to Stanford, then came back to Harvard, and she took the archive with her, and I saw it live in both those spaces. And so on the one hand, you have, look, these are the top universities in the world, and they are saying that hip hop is important and valid and deserves to be studied. And yet at the same time, the ethos and the spirit of the archive is that, hey, whether you're at one of these elite universities or, you know, you're in your mama's basement, writing your rhymes and doing your work as an artist, you are an intellectual and we value and respect you, and you're part of the culture that is changing the world. And I feel like that value system is something not only that I'm really proud of, but I feel like, going back to Gordon Parks, he lived that. And often he lived that alone before he became famous. And so then it's our responsibility, not just those of us who are educators, I'm speaking to the young people out there, it's our responsibility to carry that torch of self-educated intellectualism, self-educated artistry, of saying nobody can stand in my way because my ideas are too important to be ignored. I think that's something that the archive is celebrating, and it's something that the spirit of Gordon Parks, I think, is all about.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to again, right, because of time, what I want to also try to get to, because I think it's so important, is Dionne, you talked about as well those ideas of his films, so to speak, right? We talked about the other things that we mentioned, but could we talk a little bit about um, his filmology, and that and specifically with how the film Shaft sort of like impacted the industry?
Yeah, and Dr. Morgan, please jump in and too with this. Many people don't know about the Learning Tree from 1969, which was the first film by an African-American filmmaker to be produced by a studio, and it's really quite beautiful. I really recommend that people look at it. But he's best known for Shaft emerging in the early 1970s, which along kind of like there was a trio of Shaft, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song by Melvin Van Peebles, which came out that same year, and then Cotton Comes to Harlem by Ossie Davis. So you had these three films by these three Black filmmakers that were kind of redefining not only the film industry, but what a film hero, what a leading man was, and what a leading man looked like, and what that meant. For most people, we think about this as the beginning of the Blaxploitation genre. When I used to work in the entertainment industry, and George, Professor Larkins, I've told you this, people used to always, when I was working in the entertainment industry in the 90s, people were always saying, Shaft saved MGM. Like, this is what Black people in the entertainment industry, we were still talking about that in the 90s because MGM was in trouble, and then Shaft saves it from bankruptcy. And that's important because it demonstrated, and I think, again, hip hop does this later, not just the power of Black filmmakers, but the power of a Black audience, right? Black audiences can make or break something in terms of their success. And then we keep seeing these images of the Blaxploitation, and I don't like that term. I would say the Black urban folk dramas, maybe, is what I would probably call them. But we see that over and over again in hip hop culture and in other genres and other forms of media. And one thing that I would say about that, and we see this in Parks photography too, is this assertion of not only kind of Black cool, but Black subjectivity, Black authority, Black control. Shaft didn't back down to anybody. Right? Shaft, was a complicated man and nobody understood him but his woman, right? He didn't back down. And so that idea of Black heroism, and especially around Black masculinity, there were some gender problems that we can talk about in there, but in terms of that idea of Black authority, authority over space, authority over the way one moved, authority over one's social relationships, I see all of that in hip hop. So even hip hop artists who don't recognize that they've been influenced by those early films, including by Superfly by his son, Gordon Parks Jr., are being influenced by that idea of Black humanity and Black authority and Black power that we saw there.
No, I think, I think one thing that we need to consistently think about is retrieving the real narratives about our community. You know, it's not that there are no negative narratives, of course, okay? But, you know, we're a community who's been through more than, you know, many people in the world in terms of how badly we've been abused and treated, and how we still believe, we love, we care, and we don't want to be like the people who do that. Okay. And so there's this space, you know, for, they used to say unity, struggle, unity. And I think, you know, the bad Black character, I love as a character, okay? But I'm sorry, the regular Black men are working, you know, they are loving their kids. They love the mamas. Now that we don't have to fight about anymore, sadly, you know, they get, yeah, I guess that is, you know, so it's like, we need to reclaim our humanity as regular, and really get at where we need to be in this country in order to make it, you know, just the wonderful life and place that
Absolutely.
it should be.
Absolutely. What I like to, again, right, because of time, I like what I like close out on is this image, right? That relationship of parks and hip hop. See, I'm going to bring this image up. Just gonna find it, right? And it's through the Parks Foundation, right? Now, all right, this is Gordon Parks,
Right.
right? And this is his, and these are hip hop artists, right? And I'm sure Dr. Morgan can really break this down. And, you know, and could we talk about like maybe like what this means to us as a people for him to have done something like this?
You know, I'm just going to briefly say something and ask every, you know, one who's listening, you know, to see if they could get a hold of this and actually take a look at it and see who's there and understand the story. Gordon Parks did a shoot. This is based on the shoot that he did years earlier in terms of jazz musicians and artists. And so it was the I was going to say not the Black Power movement, but the Black aesthetic movement. And this is exactly the same framework, the way it's set up. What's even more beautiful is that when you read about the artists coming in to get the picture taken, they don't understand what they've been invited to. They don't understand, you know, they're doing it because, well, okay, okay, you're going there, I'll be there with you. And there was suspicion, like, what is going on, you know? And when they get there and start seeing each other, and there he is trying, you know, to make sure they really connect with each other, but also understand they're connecting with the generation that's before them who did the arts for the people as well. And so there's a certain beauty and you know, sadness and joy in looking at that. And that we, you know, I just love knowing that there's so many people in our community that are incredibly talented, have incredible courage, and won't let moments, if they can do it, they'll do it, you know. And it's a tribute to them and to our entire community to keep going and trying. And I still, when I see it, you know, get kind of teary-eyed.
Absolutely.
You know, because you just think about now, you know, and it was worse, you know. It's like, ooh, all right, you know, ancestors, pretty good. Yeah, for real. And it's our turn,
Absolutely.
you know.
So Dionne, your thoughts on this? Anything?
Yeah, I mean the Great Day in Hip Hop photograph occurs in 1998, and it's based on a Great Day in Harlem that had occurred in 1958. And as Dr. Morgan was describing, which was jazz musicians, and in 95, Parks photographed the surviving those surviving jazz musicians at exactly this spot. And if you think of those three images together, the original arcane image from 58, then all of these jazz musicians kind of, passing away, and then all of these hip hop artists coming back to life, bringing that back to life, it helps you really understand, kind of what I want to kind of echo what Dr. Morgan is saying of hip hop as the new jazz in a way, including the element of improvisation, but also those same Harlem Renaissance dynamics. Professor Larkins, you and I have talked about Gordon Parks as a Renaissance man on both levels, both in the classical sense, but also in, the Harlem Renaissance sense. And I know we're running out of time. I hope people will also look at the video element by Kendrick Lamar, which is filled with images not from Parks' films, but from his photographs. Throughout the video, his photographs are reproduced. Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys are two of they may be, the largest collectors, or the, at least certainly the most well-known collectors of Parks art. And Swiss Beats said he was in the neighborhood when this happened, and he didn't go, and he still regrets it. Right? Even the people who aren't there regret, not being there. Another image again, or another context for his work, I encourage people to look up the way that Lovecraft Country, and again, Professor Larkins, you and I have talked about this as well, borrows from those photographs. And it would have been enough, right? It would have been enough if Gordon Parks just did Shaft and the, capture the imagination of the hip hop generation and all the things that they did. But one of the things that I love about what we're seeing hip hop artists do is to look not just at the film, but at the photography and at the spirit of Parks, because it's a spirit of celebrating art and activism and intellectualism as this kind of trinity of Black life and culture. And he modeled it for us. The hip hop generation is living it. And my hope and my belief is that this next rising generation of artists, including our students, are going to continue that path of bringing art, intellectualism, and activism together.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to leave parting words up to our panelists. Briefly, Parks, Dr. Morgan pointed out and also Dr. Bennett pointed out the Great Day in Jazz sung by Arcane. Arcane was also my mentor, and I like where Professor Morgan points out that people were a little bit suspicious coming to that, and one reason being in the 90s, right, the police department would throw these parties, right, and then they would have the people come to the party, and then they would come and arrest everybody there. Right. So some of that's, and so that suspicion stems from that particular thing. Wait a minute, why are we here together? Is, they're looking for raids to happen. So, all of that was kind of justified. And for Parks to sort of like calm that down, right, and bring those people together like that was an amazing feat. So as we close, right, parting words as for what would you, starting with Dr. Morgan, what do you want to leave our students with as they go forward in the world?
Well, I just want you to know, I know you can do it. I'm counting on you. It's just like you can, and hurt as few people as you can, but you got to do it and make the sacrifices you need to make. But don't forget who you are and where you're from, and make sure you stay in touch with people who support and love you.
Awesome. Absolutely. Dr. Bennett, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. I think, just to build off of what Dr. Morgan was saying, one of the lessons of Gordon Parks is who you are and where you're from, the very things about you that America, in its larger dominant narratives may punish you for, are the source of your greatness. They are the source of your knowledge. They are the source of your genius. They are the source of your beauty. So not only should you not be turning your back on them, you should be looking into them to see what you can keep learning and sharing and building from them, because that's what Gordon Parks did. And that's why we're still talking about him, because he didn't turn away from who he was. He celebrated the beauty and genius of his cultural heritage, and he turned it into the art that is still inspiring us. And I know the genius of our students. Our students are brilliant. And Dr. Morgan, I'm sorry to tell you, I know that you are at Harvard. I will put our City Tech students against any Ivy League students in the whole country. They're that good, and we're that proud of them. So really, don't just believe in yourself and where you come from, but look at the beauty of it and think of how the beauty of who you are and where you come from can turn into your art and your activism and your intellectualism and your future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said. And which brings me to that point where, one of the things that Parks always said, and from birth, whenever times got hard, his mother told him this before the Nike and all the sports commercials came out, was no excuses. That was his motto, no excuses. So, and if he didn't have any with what he went through, I know we can do it, right? Because we are we are standing on his shoulders, right? He's popping us every time it looks, as I say, every time it looks rough, just look down and he's looking up at you, right? He has us, right? With that, I really appreciate our wonderful panelists. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you showed up, that we're here, and Dr. Morgan, Dr. Bennett, my gratitude, right, for
Thank you
you.
all for a wonderful evening. This has been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Awesome, absolutely.
Hope we can do it again.
That would be nice. Absolutely, we should do this again. Thanks again.
Thank you to everyone. And Dr. Morgan, thank you for doing this. Dr. Morgan donated her time to us because she loves and believes in you guys. So that's why she's here. We love and believe in you too. And that's why we're here. Thank you, Professor Larkins, for putting on a great event. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. All right, Josh, we